This event that we're holding now is also because on Saturday we had World Wetlands Day. This year the topic is wetlands and climate change, and we are looking today at how wetlands incorporated with other type of infrastructure can help cities adapt to this climate change hazard. Le samedi, c'était la journée internationale du zone humide, donc c'est aussi une raison pour organiser cet événement. Donc aujourd'hui, on va regarder comment les zones humides avec les autres infrastructures peut aider la vie à s'adapter au changement climatique. We have a very nice wide speakers list with very different cases and different organizations. So we're very proud. And I will just give a very short introduction. I'm the Urban Resilience Coordinator for Wetlands International. I've worked a lot in Panama City with our Vice Mayor that we have here. Very pleased. I'll give a short introduction on who we are. We are the global non-for-profit organization dedicated to the protection, conservation, and restoration of wetlands. And we do this for people and for nature. We have 20 offices around the world. So we might have one nearby you as well. We should have an office in Mexico soon, but we have one in Guatemala, and we try to work from there. And we work through different partners, such as the Partners for Resilience, the Global Resilience Partnership, the Global Mangrove Alliance, and some others. We are very happy to have the program manager here of Water Leverage for resilient cities in Asia, and she will give a presentation later on as well. The way we work is through working on policy. So on one hand, working with governments, on the other hand, working on practice, having demonstration projects, upscaling them in the field, and working knowledge with institutes like Deltares and others, universities, to get the best knowledge that there is to support our work. The question of today is we're looking at infrastructure. So we're looking at blue, green, and gray. Are they the same? No, they're not the same. They are quite different, and we'll show you a couple of examples. Blue, we can look at gray infrastructure first. It's traditional measures made with a lot of concrete, bricks, mortar, and all those things such as dikes and seawalls. They are static. They are not adaptable. They sometimes have a shorter lifespan than, for example, green infrastructure. That is considered as planned networks of natural and semi-natural areas with other environmental features designed and managed to deliver different ecosystem services. You can see in the icons below that, for example, they help to regulate water flows. They can protect you and absorb storm energy, and they can provide you with health benefits for recreation as well. But then we add another component, the component of water, and then we get the blue and green infrastructure. So planned interconnected networks of natural and semi-natural areas, including water bodies, and green and open spaces that provide different ecosystem services. It is an EU Commission definition, so very well recognized here in Brussels. And you see even more services, icons are there for the services that they provide. I will show you a couple of photos of the different types of infrastructure. But this is the way that we want to plan this event. So we have, for example, a project from IT and think, okay, my project, does it have green infrastructure? Does it have gray infrastructure? Does it have blue and green? Or maybe blue and green and a bit of gray? So when the other people are presenting, please think in these three types. And that would help us all recognize on which pillar we are working. So the example of gray infrastructure, this is in the coast of Guyana. This was a seawall. You see throughout the years, the coast has been eating it up, and its lifespan has finished and now leaves an even more vulnerable coast. So this is a bad example, it has to do with sedimentation streams and waves, and a normal mudflat with a mangrove behind it brings the sediment goes out, the tides come in, they bring the sediment. But if you intervene in that process by building a big wall, then the sediment doesn't come in, it will only go out and it will erode, and then you will get what we saw in the previous picture. Green infrastructure. This is an example of green infrastructure. You see a long lane with nice green areas where you can walk, you can cycle, you can ride, the biodiversity can go from one place to the other. So it's still a nice part of a network. And in some places, this is absolutely fine. And this is a nice picture of Panama City, the way we would love to see it in the future. We have a nice network where, let's say, where the water can flow. If we can, next to these water flows, we can also put in bicycle lanes, then the people can also flow, and the biodiversity can also flow. So you have three important parts, elements that can use this type of infrastructure, in addition to the other benefits. And this is from the presentation that Sandra will get a bit later. This is the way we would like to see the coast of Semarang. Semarang is a city in Indonesia where a lot of groundwater is being pumped out, where a lot of coastal erosion is, where the soil is subsiding. And we are working also with Deltares and with One Architecture to build a better future for the city using this blue and green infrastructure. So this is my introduction, and now I want to give the floor to Claude Harry Mylord, the mayor of Jeremy in Haiti. I will do the translation for you. I hope this is fine. And if you, does it work? The only thing is that the PowerPoint is not working very well. Maybe you can just. Do you have an idea? Comme ça? Okay. Ouais. Donc, je voudrais vous inviter, s'assied ou comment vous voulez.
Mais après, sauf que vous allez monter pour les autres images.
Ok, d'accord. Ouais,
et mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir.
Merci.
Alors, vous allez traduire.
Ouais, moi je vais utiliser ici. Commencez.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir.
Good afternoon.
Et après-midi, moi, cet après-midi, je suis vraiment content d'être avec vous pour vous présenter le plan d'urbanisation de ma commune, qui est la commune de Jérémy, de la République d'Haïti.
He's very happy to be here this afternoon and to present to you the plan for the urban areas of Jeremy, the city in Haiti.
Alors, avant de continuer, je remercie l'Union européenne, la Commission régionale et Wetterland qui me permet cet après-midi d'être avec vous.
I would like to thank the European Commission and the European Committee for the Regions, and the National for having the chance to talk.
Et en 2016, en octobre 2016, un ouragan qui s'appelait Matthew avait, ou du moins, a ravagé la commune de Jérémy.
In October 2016, Hurricane Matthew devastated Jeremy.
À ce moment-là, l'Union européenne avait envoyé une équipe pour pouvoir nous aider à faire une évaluation.
After the European Union sent a team over to help them tackle the problem.
Suite à cette évaluation, on a lancé un appel à proposition de projet pouvant aider ou pouvant permettre les ONG à bider.
After that, they asked to have a goal for projects to have NGOs help them face the problem.
Comme ça, des ONG ont gagné Care France et Goal de Land.
The NGOs Care France and
Goal.
Goal, they won the bid. That was written out by the UK.
Et ensuite, ONU Habitat était là aussi pour faire l'évaluation. Donc maintenant, suite à un financement de l'Union européenne, maintenant ONU Habitat vient de travailler avec nous dans ma commune pour pouvoir doter cette commune d'un plan d'urbanisation.
UN Habitat was also present, and they are now helping to make a plan for more resilient journey. And that's the plan. The program will be at least. Ah, okay.
Là, c'est cette ville qui a été dévastée par l'ouragan Matthew.
This is the town that was destroyed by Hurricane Matthew.
Donc maintenant, vous voyez l'état de la ville. Malgré tout, ça commence à se réparer parce qu'il y a pas mal de maisons qui ont été réparées après l'ouragan Matthew. Donc c'est ce qui paraît là.
Ce ne sont pas réparés.
C'est commencé. La réparation a déjà commencé là.
Ah, okay. So this is at the beginning how it was before Hurricane Matthew. Okay.
Maintenant, pour doter la ville de Jérémie et de ce plan d'urbanisation, on avait organisé 3 séances. La première séance, c'était juste pour diagnostiquer les problèmes. Maintenant, après le diagnostic, analyse et diagnostic des problèmes, maintenant, pour le deuxième atelier, c'était juste pour commencer à venir à proposer des solutions.
Okay, so equipped with this plan, they started in different phases of implementation. The first was doing a good diagnostic, and the second one was doing the stakeholder participation.
Et troisièmement, le troisième, c'était juste pour proposer les projets.
And the third phase is developing the projects, proposing them.
Là, c'est une autre commune. C'est la commune de Beaumont.
So this is another town. It's called Beaumont, and this is Jeremy.
Puisque cette carte est montée là, donc je vais juste vous donner des explications. Parce que ça concerne l'investissement de l'Union européenne là-bas.
Okay, so the European Union looked at these 4 areas as part of the entire project, and he was in charge of the Jeremy.
Parce que ma commune, la commune de Beaumont et la commune de Damary sont fait partie du département de la Grande-Anse. Cette partie-là font partie du département de la Grande-Anse. Par contre, dans le département de la Grande-Anse, l'Union européenne a permis de 3 communes de se doter du plan d'urbanisation. C'est la commune de Jérémie, la commune de Beaumont et la commune de Damary.
Okay, so looking at the entire province, the European Union made 3 urbanization plans for Beaumont, Jérémie, and Damary.
Ça veut dire, maintenant, on a Jérémie, Beaumont et Damary qui ont doté d'un plan d'urbanisation.
So these are the 3 urbanization.
Donc maintenant, après la dotation du plan d'urbanisation, donc d'après l'Union européenne, on ne va pas mettre ces plans d'urbanisation dans des tiroirs. Tiroirs.
Ah, okay, they're going to implement these 3 urbanization plans.
Sinon, ça va servir à rien. Donc maintenant, l'Union européenne, pour débuter, commence à financer certains projets tenir compte du plan d'urbanisation de la commune de Jérémie.
So they're now starting to look at financing the first project.
Mais malheureusement, par faute de fonds disponibles, c'est seulement ma commune qui ont pu trouver un peu de financement.
Okay, so only for Jeremy, they have now started to find the right finance. So they're waiting for the other 2.
Maintenant, les ONG qui ont pu gagner l'appel à proposition ont déjà commencé à implémenter les activités là-bas.
Okay, so the two NGOs that won the call for proposals, they are now implementing the first actions.
Mais on donne beaucoup d'importance à la gestion des déchets, la circulation au niveau de la ville, et le changement climatique, la relance de l'économie, la bonne gouvernance.
So there's a lot of potential of doing very good projects to improve governance, improve water management, improve circular economy.
Et moi, personnellement, j'ai un sentiment très particulier dans la lutte contre le changement climatique.
He has a very strong feeling of fighting climate change, and that's one of his main drivers.
Parce que normalement, la remarque que j'ai faite, c'est que le changement climatique engendre l'exode rural. Le changement climatique aussi permet, ou du moins, d'augmenter le niveau de pauvreté.
So climate change has also increased the levels of poverty, and has also other negative effects on the rural areas.
C'est pourquoi que je donne une attention très particulière dans le cadre de la lutte contre le changement climatique et inclus dans le plan d'urbanisation.
Yeah, so that's why climate change is an important part in their urbanization plan.
Maintenant, ça, c'est le plan de là où on a fait le diagnostic. Donc, il y en a ce cercle-là, il y en a deux, c'est là, c'est la zone urbaine concentrée. Et la deuxième cercle, c'est juste pour pouvoir élargir la ville, pour pouvoir agrandir la ville dans ces espaces-là.
Yeah. So in the first phase, we're looking at the urban center, urban heart, and then in the second phase, looking more in the surroundings. Il phase 3 et phase 4.
Exact.
Okay, are more in here. Look at this page. Right.
Okay. Là, c'est une zone humide, c'est à l'entrée de la ville. Maintenant, il y en a, disons, l'embouchure de cette rivière est placée probablement à 200 mètres. Maintenant, c'est là qu'est positionné le site de décharge. Un site de décharge à l'état sauvage. Et la mer, le littoral, est à une centaine de mètres du site de décharge. C'est vraiment dur. Je ne peux pas l'accepter. Mais étant donné qu'on n'a pas d'autre espace jusqu'à présent, c'est comme si on n'a pas de pied, mais on est obligé de marcher. On marche sur la jambe, même si l'eau craque. On est obligé.
Okay. So this is an urban wetland, on the fringes of the city. It runs into the déchaînement.
Oui. Oui.
Et garbage area.
Maintenant, là est positionné aussi un nappe phréatique. Et ces nappes commencent à se polluer.
Ah, ok.
Vous avez oublié qu'il a dit landfill near this river.
Yeah, landfill, the garbage dump.
It gives rubbish to the sea.
Yeah.
To the groundwater, the aquifer.
And the aquifer is getting polluted as well.
Exact. Donc maintenant, la nappe commence à se polluer. Et ensuite, là, dans le temps, il y avait la mangrove qui était là. Maintenant, la mangrove est complètement détruite.
So on that side, there's also a mangrove, and it's been completely destroyed.
Même les poissons sont en danger.
And even the fish reproduction habitats, the fish production is going.
Maintenant, dans le plan d'urbanisation, on va réaménager cet espace et retourner avec la mangrove, créer une promenade et, disons, créer l'espace vert Et ensuite, relocaliser les sites de décharge.
Okay, so they want to build, to restore the mangroves, build a nice area for recreation and the
field. Réhabiliter.
Yeah. The relocate. So the landfill, yeah.
Les sites de décharge. Bon, maintenant, pour relocaliser les sites de décharge, d'après le plan que vous voyez avant, on va monter un peu plus haut, là, qui a un espace beaucoup plus approprié et qui a aussi, qui dans cet espace-là, il se positionne deux failles. Failles, comment dire, je ne sais pas comment. Non, failles pouvant provoquer du séisme. Faille.
Ah, fault.
Ok.
Ah, ok.
Faille.
Il y a deux failles là-bas.
Pouvant provoquer du séisme.
So, in addition to all these problems, they're also living on a fault line.
Okay.
Fault line. But with their plan, they want to rehabilitate this area and make it better for living.
Le fait qu'il existe deux failles dans cette zone, on est obligé d'empêcher les gens à construire dans cette zone.
So when you're building in that fragile area, you have to make sure your house are earthquake-proof.
Mais on va voir ce qui est un peu difficile, vraiment difficile, c'est que les gens n'arrivent pas à comprendre la réalité.
It's very hard because the people don't fully understand this complexity and learn to live with it.
Parce que c'est à peine réalisé le plan d'urbanisation. Donc, c'est-à-dire, ils n'arrivent pas à comprendre jusqu'à présent, mais on est en train de les sensibiliser.
Okay.
Donc, à partir de la sensibilisation, il arrive finalement à comprendre la réalité. Donc, maintenant, là, vous voyez, ce sont les deux failles. La première faille passe ici et l'autre faille, ok, ça monte jusqu'ici. Donc, on va positionner le nouveau site de décharge ici.
So the new landfill will be placed here instead of in the wetland area.
Donc, là,
These are two fault lines.
le site de décharge est là.
Yeah. Now the waste dump is there.
Exact. Maintenant, on va déplacer ce site de décharge-là pour l'emmener jusqu'ici.
So okay. Move it over there.
Et ensuite, là, il y a une gare routière positionnée là, qui est une zone inondable.
It's a flooding zone for history already, where the wetland can expand.
On va déplacer le site de décharge là, et pas le site de décharge, la gare routière là, pour l'emmener ici. C'est plus sécurisé.
Ok.
On va déplacer le site de décharge, relocaliser le site de décharge. Pas le site de décharge, la gare routière. La gare routière, c'est là. On va relocaliser la gare routière pour l'emmener ici.
La gare routière?
Bus station.
Oh, the bus station. Ah, the gare. Okay. So the bus station will also be moved there.
Ok.
Ouais. On fait ça.
La gare routière.
Le dernier mot?
Oui. Donc maintenant, là, vous voyez, c'est cet espace-là qu'on va s'occuper seulement, maintenant, sans tenir compte de ces espaces-là. Parce que normalement, le plan d'urbanisation, disons, on a juste fixé une date, c'est pour un espace de 15 ans. Donc,
okay.
Après,
so the urbanization plan is for 15 years ahead of now.
C'est pourquoi, au départ, on nous donne une limite,
okay.
Concentrée presque sur le centre-ville. Même si on touche les zones, les banlieues, mais on ne va pas aller plus loin que ça.
Okay. So they're taking it step by step for taking it from the center. Okay.
Parce que le problème, le financement, c'est vraiment compliqué là-bas. Même le gouvernement ne conscient pas de la situation de certains endroits du pays.
Okay. So yeah, financing is a big problem also.
Dans le temps, il y en avait un fonds qu'on appelle fonds communaux qu'on met toujours disponible aux collectivités, mais maintenant c'est compliqué depuis 4 ans.
Okay, so they have let's say a revolving fund for communities, but it's also hard to sustain this fund.
C'est pourquoi l'Union européenne, après la dotation du plan d'urbanisation, de commencer à financer des activités pour nous là-bas.
So now with the European Union providing this urbanization plan, it's also for them to step up and have it.
Maintenant, avec le plan d'urbanisation, on a un outil pour discuter avec des partenaires, pour discuter avec le secteur privé.
So with this plan, you can engage the private sector and all different stakeholders in building.
Mais on a aussi le PNUD, qui est de l'Agence des Nations Unies, qui est là-bas avec nous dans le cadre du projet gestion des déchets solides. Donc maintenant, une fois passé à la dotation d'ici, donc on va donner au PNUD cet espace, donc on va ainsi des décharges contrôlées.
So they are now talking to the United Nations Development Program to take care of the waste problem, solid waste problem, and put the dump in another site.
Alors ce qui est intéressant, c'est que le financement pour construire le nouveau site de décharge est censé être disponible.
C'est disponible?
C'est disponible.
Okay, so the money to build the new garbage dump is available at the moment.
C'est vraiment intéressant.
Okay, definitely.
Donc maintenant, ce qui est compliqué,
It's complicated.
la complication, c'est l'acquisition du terrain.
Yeah, and it's a problem with waste management in many cities. You have to buy the land.
L'espace appartient au secteur privé.
Yeah.
Donc c'est vraiment compliqué. C'est une véritable lutte pour pouvoir passer à l'acquisition de l'espace.
Yeah. So acquiring the land is a difficult process.
Parce que les gens refusent, je crois que
Exact.
Nobody wants to live near a waste dump.
Yeah.
Mais on se bat quand même.
Mais vous avez déjà fait, pardon, une étude d'impact environnemental.
Oui, et il y en a une étude qui se faisait avec SIAP. Et SIAP est une institution haïtienne dont le PNUD est en train de travailler avec cette institution aussi. Et non seulement sur les communes de la Gandance, aussi sur la commune de Port-au-Prince. Parce que maintenant, on est en train de travailler dans la capitale suite au séisme début janvier 2010, depuis que l'Union européenne finance des activités là-bas. Maintenant, on va passer à une autre phase. Okay. C'est aussi la redynamisation et le plan d'urbanisation sur la capitale haïtienne qui est extrêmement difficile.
Okay, so they're now looking at other places for this garbage problem, or even to the capital of Port-au-Prince, and they are also in the process of renovating their urban development. So it's complicated.
Okay.
Est-ce que vous avez intégré dans votre plan urbanistique la dimension environnementale, à savoir l'efficacité énergétique?
Oui, pour l'énergie, on va passer dans l'énergie renouvelable. Essayer de voir là-bas. Mais ça rentre dans un cadre macro. Ce n'est pas spécifique. Mais c'est parce que ça, il y en a, ça va coûter aussi. Mais là où on va relocaliser les sites de décharge, on va commencer à travailler à ce niveau-là pour pouvoir essayer de parce qu'il y en a pas mal d'autres qu'on peut transformer là-bas.
On pourrait penser à un LED, par exemple, en éclairage public.
Look at renewable energy for this dump.
Pour l'éclairage public, ça, c'est jusqu'à présent, c'est sur la responsabilité de l'État central, de l'EDH, qui prend ça en charge. Mais il y en a, ça améliore en ces derniers jours. Mais après la catastrophe du 4 octobre 2016, c'était vraiment compliqué, mais maintenant ça a amélioré.
Donc le maire n'est pas doté de beaucoup de compétences. Les attributions sont très restreintes.
C'est très restreint, c'est très restreint. Malgré depuis plus que 15 ans qu'on est en train de lutter pour mettre en évidence la décentralisation, mais c'est un peu compliqué jusqu'à présent. Ça commence la déconcentration, mais la décentralisation réelle, c'est pas encore effective.
So they're in a decentralization process and he doesn't have all the powers that are necessary to take it further. Ok, merci beaucoup.
D'accord,
Ouais.
merci. Alors, je vous remercie de m'avoir prêté l'écoute. Donc, espérant qu'on reste en contact par l'intermédiaire de vous, je vais vous donner mon adresse mail, comme ça, on pourra rester en contact. D'accord, merci. D'accord.
Okay. Yes. So now I'd like to welcome Andrew Bauer. He's the Program Management Officer of the Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNISDR. He joined UNISDR in 2018, having worked for the past 10 years within the European Union spheres, with a focus on disaster risk management, EU civil protection, and humanitarian.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Wetlands for having us here today. Thank you for hosting this event. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Maire, pour l'introduction. J'avais quelques questions pour vous, mais je garderai ça pour l'échange par email, concernant vos activités dans la localité. But to come back to our positioning at the UN, we are the Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. We have a global scope, and I am one of the members of staff here at the regional office that covers Europe and Central Asia. So we're covering a scope of 55 countries. What I'm going to talk about today builds on our regional experience, but is global in terms of its scope and in terms of its relevance to some of the discussions, for instance, as we've just heard here at very much local level. So I'm just taking you out of very much localized projects and initiatives to something a little bit more macro and global, so you can frame it a little bit in what is going on internationally and globally before diving back down into some of the projects. So just some basic introduction as to where we stand and what we frame as disaster risk reduction in the context of cities. I'm talking about cities because we will include by cities here, I understand infrastructure and hard infrastructure in general, as well as basic essential services. Losses from disasters in 2017 overall, this is not just the cities and infrastructure, amount to quite incredible numbers. This is over 1 year, and there has been an increase compared to 2016 quite considerably, due to what, this is not part of the discussion today, but climate is increasing the severity of impacts, increased vulnerabilities, and we'll look at it particularly in the context of cities that have become complex, very much interconnected systems that has grown certain vulnerabilities, again in the European context versus contexts such as Haiti, Panama, or other parts of the world. Vulnerabilities will be different in terms of exposure to risk, exposure to hazards, as well as the vulnerability of the populations who may be living in conditions that put them at a much higher risk. But I just put here an example of a grey infrastructure disruption and damage, which was the Genoa Bridge collapse last August, which is an example typically of grey infrastructure limitations, not in terms of reducing the risk, but increasing dramatically the risk on the population. So bringing out just an example of a potential limitation of grey infrastructure. Cities, we understand them as very much systems of systems, and I'm showing this here to frame a little bit our understanding in the sense that we want to talk about infrastructure. We understand infrastructure as a very broad sense of terms. It covers all forms of sectors, but it also includes essential services, so non-hard infrastructure, talking about educational, health, and all forms of public safety, transportation, and so on. Growth of infrastructure and urbanization worldwide has been estimated by some financial consultancies as needing an estimated annual investment of over $3.3 trillion based in the current context. And this shows us the extent to which discussion around whether should we invest in grey, green, blue, grey, green, or blue-green is very much a current debate, very much appreciated from the UN family here today. And I mention this because, and what I'll be touching upon in the next few minutes, is that there is a global encouragement to look at investments in resilient infrastructure. And actually, in green and blue infrastructure, critical infrastructure and their resilience has become importantly central to some of the main international framework. One of which, UNISDR, which is the Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the acronym that doesn't stand by the name, is custodian of at global level, and this is the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. This is what we do on a day-to-day in working with member states at all levels of governance, national, well, in the global spheres, and then national as well as regional and local levels, in implementing what was agreed in 2015 in terms of reducing the risk of disasters, preventing the creation of new disaster risks, and reducing existing disaster risks, as well as managing residual risks. And all this to build resilience of societies, including of infrastructures. Urban infrastructure resilience in the Sendai framework. I'll go on the basis that not everyone is familiar with the framework, so I'll go over this quickly, and the slides will be available in case you need to come back to it at a later stage and come back to me if you have questions. The framework is set around 7 major targets. The UN member states have all agreed upon. It's a non-binding agreement, unlike the Paris Agreement, but similarly to the SDGs, it's one that all member states are working towards, and they have a set of targets. I've quoted a few here which are directly relevant to critical infrastructure and the risk reduction component to either reducing the impacts on infrastructure, but as well as reducing the losses due to the damages and disruptions to critical infrastructure. And these are regarding disaster economic losses, damage to critical infrastructure, as well as increasing the number of countries with what we call local disaster risk reduction strategies. So very much like what the Mayor Jeremy was talking about, urbanization strategies, the UN member states have agreed that all UN countries should have by 2020 national disaster risk reduction strategies, as well as many local disaster risk reduction strategies at the right level of governance. And this is a very complicated exercise. We're trying to embark with as many constituencies as we can to try and take this forward. Quite a number of Dutch cities are quite well advanced in understanding what their strategies are vis-a-vis reducing the risk of flood risk, for instance. So we work with a number of model cities in Europe, but many cities around the world have shown some very promising activities. I'm not going to go into details here. If you want to know more about these governance initiatives to strategize around how to reduce risks more generally, please do come back to me after this event when it suits you. And all these are very much linked to the priorities that this global framework set, which is the need, which I think comes back to what was talked about, the relocalization of populations and making populations aware of the risks they're exposed to, strengthening the structures to govern, to reduce risks and install measures and actions to reduce disaster risks in the long run. Investing in disaster risk reduction, resilience, and the notion of recovery and rehabilitation around the notion of rehabilitation. And of course, embedding what we call DRR, disaster risk reduction, into all various relevant initiatives, program policies. I've picked up the term partnerships you mentioned in the subtitle of your introduction, of your event. So I thought I'd mention a few partnerships in practice that we can share to this discussion. And at global level, a very central one is the fact that we're trying to make sure there's a maximum of linkage between the various international frameworks that drive the global agenda around sustainable development. Whether it's the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework, the SDGs, or the New Urban Agenda, all of various levels of binding nature, all the various levels of progress in terms of implementation, but all that have been defined in 2015 and will take us through until 2030. So an effort at UN level to try and make sure these dots are linked very closely. And actually, we engage here in Brussels very closely with our Commission colleagues who are trying to do that same exercise within the 28 or 27 soon to be. Just an example, again, come back to me if you have questions, if this is something you're interested in, is actually these frameworks have to be implemented, and their implementation is monitored according to a set of very detailed indicators, some of which are very central to measuring impacts on critical infrastructure. And actually, I'll touch upon it on my final slide, but this notion that this notion of critical infrastructure for us is irrespective of whether it's gray, blue, or green. It is a question of are these disrupted, are these damaged, and do these contribute to reducing the risk of societies? So we really look at it at the end result of your discussion and saying, whichever infrastructure, please tell us what from local and national initiatives actually is the best suited element to reduce the disaster risks in the first place. But ultimately, these indicators contribute directly to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. So while the Sendai framework is maybe more of a niche discussion of experts in the risk reduction community, it fits directly in a much broader multi-stakeholder discussion around the SDGs. Another level of partnership in practice is a campaign we've been running with UN Habitat, and UN Habitat have been contributing to, but which has been run by the UN in general around this notion of making cities resilient. So a campaign where we now have over 4,000 cities involved. These are just the number of figures of how many countries, cities, and people these are bringing together, but it really is around 10 essentials of what needs to be done to reduce risks, to build resilience at city level, and to drive build back better initiatives in contexts where there may be some recovery and rehabilitation to be done. I quote here the Lisbon Resilience Action Plan, which is a very advanced example of what can be done once a strategy around local disaster risk reduction is carried out, and what it can lead to, and how very closely this is associated to the plans of urbanization plans and urban planning. So, Monsieur le maire, ici, ce lien est direct entre les plans d'action dans la réduction des risques avec les politiques d'urbanisation. Le cas de Lisbonne au Portugal en est un excellent sur lequel je pourrais vous apporter plus d'éclaircissements plus tard si cela vous intéresse. Certain tools, and again, this is just to flavor a little bit the discussion around certain elements you may want to go back looking at. At UN level, we offer cities what we call a disaster resilience scorecard, which is a quick self-assessment of a various set of indicators, over 100, which allow a city to measure how resilient it is to disaster risks of natural or man-made origin, and undertake a more thorough analysis after that in terms of what needs to be put in place to increase its resilience and risk reduction. Actually, these indicators are feeding directly in the work being done on ISO 37123, which is a follow-up to the ISO 37120 on sustainable development of cities and urban environments. We have a handbook. All of this is on the website, and another tool which we call the quick risk estimation. This is a quick and dirty tool that anyone with some form of authority in a local government can use to check what is my basic level of risk, therefore what is my basic level of exposure to hazards, as well as my vulnerabilities to those hazards, on the basis of which to influence possibly funding attributions, involvement in certain initiatives or others. And another level, so I'm taking it down yet another stage, and this is an exercise, and here again I promote also a commission-funded initiative, which was called U-Score 2, which has just come to an end, but we were somehow engaged in it. And we thought of this as an excellent example of how partnerships can help in addressing infrastructure needs around, in our case, resilience building. And this is city-to-city local peer reviews. And we had examples of a UK local authority engaging with a Portuguese authority and an association of Italian authorities. And we got extremely successful feedback. I mean, I cannot speak on behalf of the Commission in terms of what their assessment of the project was ultimately, but at least as an external stakeholder being involved in advising on the process, we saw some very positive outcomes. I'm just citing here some of these, and it is very much a win-win type of exercise. And at UN level, we've really decided that this is something we want to take forward as a concept and try and see how cities who may be looking at similar types of initiatives, similar types of challenges, may be interested in exchanging views. I know that in the context of DevCo, for instance, in the global sphere, this notion of twinning is now an important component. And city-to-city peer review follows that logic. And in this context, it is all about risk reduction. So this is my last slide, which is a bit way ahead in terms of some questions as to frame some of the discussions on the projects that come up. Is very much from our perspective, critical infrastructure is very much embedded in disaster risk reduction at a global level. But what we understand is when we ask people, so how do you value green and blue infrastructure vis-a-vis gray infrastructure? And they say, well, this is critical infrastructure. So there's clearly a limited understanding as to what one is vis-a-vis the other, beyond the basic visual and color code understanding of what they mean, but in terms of their value and challenges vis-a-vis reducing risks of disasters in the first place. Majority of investments, therefore, as a result, have and remain, at least the planned ones, on grey infrastructure, and may rarely inform from an ecosystem approach or an ecosystem resilience approach or a local community resilience approach, or even from a disaster risk reduction approach, which is what we try, that element on DRR, I think, is where we're trying to put a bit of emphasis vis-a-vis national and local governments. Grey infrastructure, unfortunately, the first picture probably proved otherwise, but it has proved effective, at least in risk reduction. The Dutch are very well placed to acknowledge that dikes have helped a country survive 100-year return floods, and having not seen any in recent history, but they do come with limitations in creating a sense of a false sense of security. Like you were saying, this notion that do they have the capacity to self-adjust to climate change? No, because they're static. And unlike nature, they don't really provide those environmental, economic, and social co-benefits you may get from cycling to work or enjoying less polluted air than you may do in a very grey infrastructure-dominated environment. Some ideas just to go ahead, which I was thinking about where we may want to go ahead if we continue engaging on this green, blue, grey discussion from UNISDR's perspective, would be to say, well, what are the community's essential? What is their need? What is the value of essential services? And where can they find a solution in green, blue, or grey infrastructure? And I'm sure there's a lot of expertise on this, which can feed into the disaster risk reduction area and discussions. Hybrid solutions, I'm sure in the context of infrastructure experts, this is a very well-known topic, but we haven't really seen very much in our disaster risk reduction agenda and narrative of that combination of both. We keep trying to, from an outside looking in, we hear that green or blue should replace grey systematically because one is the past, the other one is the future, but actually is the hybrid set of solutions the way forward. As I mentioned, there is a work, and I think ISO should be releasing this new standard this year, called 371323, on resilient cities specifically. And in that case, what will be the place for green and blue infrastructure? And this is more of an open question for the future. And again, from a non-expert position, are there standards, or will they be more standards in the future, looking ahead in the future around green infrastructure, promote nature-based solutions, and to what extent will risk reduction elements find themselves in that? So that's it from me. I'm here until the end, and I'm also immediately joinable by email, so don't hesitate to be in touch. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for this good presentation. I think one of the answers to these questions, how to measure the benefits, will appear probably in the presentation of Sandra. And now I would like to welcome Mrs. Reisa Banfield, currently Vice Mayor of the City of Panama until May.
No, until July.
Until July, okay, we have a handover. She is an architect at her own architecture firm, and then went into environmental advocacy, and then she got elected as vice mayor together with the current mayor, Figueroa. And she can tell everything herself. She knows.
Thank you, Sander. May I speak in Spanish? No.
Sure.
For sure, Mexico is glad of that. Okay, let's try to speak in Spanglish at least. Okay. Yes, in these 5 years, finishing now in June, we worked a lot about urban planning and risk management and resilience. In that way, wetlands was very helpful and support all of our work, and even making contacts with the international government to exchange knowledge and technical solutions. The floods issues in Panama is a very complex thing because the private sector like to develop wetlands because it's the new land to conquer, and the community living behind the wetlands is suffering the floods because the wetlands now are getting landfills. So that's the controversy we have, but we start to make a diagnosis and studies with the support of all the parts, even the what do you say, Netherlands, yes. So Panama is very rich in biodiversity. It's one of the hottest spots of biodiversity in the entire world because it's connecting two oceans and is a bridge of biodiversity from north and south, and the currents, the seas of the Atlantic and the Pacific. So it's like a consummate of biodiversity in 77,000 square kilometers. We have, most biodiversity by square kilometer than Amazon in Brazil, and more vertebrados that in all Central American and Caribbean, and more species of birds than in the United States and Canada together. And Panama City concentrates a lot of that biodiversity because we are surrounded of rainforest. It's amazing. It's the only city in the entire world with a rainforest in the middle connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific at the same time. Just in Panama, happens. So we have that city and rainforest. And so far, a lot of people saw that forest like some obstacle to the development. We try to convert that vision in the reason of our real and sustainable development. So we are doing that with all this process of urban planning and that I said before. This is this is our city. This is the river in the middle is not the river, it's the Panama Canal. And we have a rainforest among Panama Canal since the Atlantic to the Pacific. And this city is coasted in the bay. And we are part of a huge metropolitan area with another 4 cities, San Miguelito, Araijan, La Chorrera, and in Atlantic, Colón, okay? But Panama, because the canal and the bay, we grow up from east to west. And that's a little problem because we are in a small city, but very spread out. So what we have, the green areas are the qualified green areas for the city. It's too small for the population. And what we have in brown, more or less, is the floods area that are getting bigger because we are losing space for water. And the red is the occupation of mangroves and wetlands. And it's a problem because there are, from this private sector, there are a lot of expectation to develop that area. From the other part, we are trying to stop there and trying to develop inside in the city to increase the density and protect the rainforest and the wetlands. Panama has 5 mangroves and wetlands protected by Ramsar Convention. 5. One is in Panama City, Panama Bay. Those mangroves you see there, and you can see mangroves as city in the same plane, in the same view, and we have in Panama we have 15 from 70 kind of mangroves from Central America. It's a very biodiversity. even the mangroves. So all these diagnoses, the problem and the potentialities, we put together in an action plan. In this action plan, we have 10 sustainability challenges, climate change, and vulnerability to disasters from others. Some of the challenges, this is this way to grow up, and the grow up to until the mangroves. Let's see this. Okay, what we have. This is Juan Díaz River, one of the más importantes ríos. One of the most important rivers in the city. It's very short but very strong and has a lot of water. And because it has no space for overflowing, if the water goes to the people behind. And this land you can see here used to be a wetlands, now has 7 meters of landfill, 4 over the roof of the houses behind. So this is a social and urban problem that we have facing with this process of water dialogues. Okay, this is, for example, Juan Díaz River, when it's raining and the sea level in the Pacific is high, in 15 minutes, the people in Ciudad Radial can be in that way, in 15 minutes. I was with them that day, and it's incredible the velocity with the water get up. And for example, this is the landfill in front of the community originally of that area. And this is the people angry because they feel nobody does anything, but we continue to approve projects and projects and projects because we have so far, we don't have so far, no, we didn't have so far rules to stop that, okay? Thank you for your questions. Okay, and we start with the support of Westland and Netherlands and IDB, the dialogues of water, the water dialogues, working with the community, the sector, the private sector, the different parts of the government, start to understand the problem and put new rules with a vision 2025 and designing with the gray, green, and blue. For the first time, Panama has a loan for $100 million from the IDB to implement a new project with a gray, blue, and green infrastructure to solve and mitigate the problem in Juan Díaz. This is the way we can see in the future how we can use the river as an open space, like a park, linear park, thank you, and the lagoons for get more space for water. So I would like to respond any question about it, because the other slides is about the process of recovery, even in resilience process, the center of the city, but I think it's not the case today. Thank you so much for your questions.
We will have a couple of more presentations, and after that we have some nice drinks in the room nearby. The next presentation, I would like to ask Sandra Schoof to come here. She's the program manager of water leverage for resilient cities in Asia, and she might have an answer on the question: how can we improve the understanding of the value of the blue and green measures? Looking at the 3 cities that water leverage is working, also from the view of bankability of these projects. And she is, of course, the program manager at the Netherlands Enterprise Agency of the Government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Also master's degree in social science of the Utrecht University, and ample experience also at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Water and Agentschap.
Well, happy to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I work at the National Enterprise Agency, part of the main implementing agency, or the biggest one for development aid for the Netherlands government. I will tell you something about the Water as Leverage program, which we started last year. I'm showing you this graph just to try to explain the logic behind the program. As you can see, there is in this graph weather events are more extreme. Temperatures rising, sea levels are rising, also population growth in cities are rising. No need to explain this more to you. But because of these, all these events going up, what we see is that to tackle the challenges in the cities, in the area of urban and water, in a traditional way, is not enough anymore. So building on the knowledge that you gained over the years and then add something up to it and then do it again or change it a little bit will not be enough to be able to tackle the upgoing challenges as you see. So what we are trying to do now with the program Water as Leverage, we try to develop an approach to leapfrog and to develop what we call a proactive approach, which I will explain to you. The three basic or core pillars of the program are inclusiveness, integrated, the three I's as I call them, inclusive, integrated, and innovative. It's inspired on Rebuild by Design, based on the Hurricane Sandy in America. I don't know if you heard about it. One of the Netherlands water ambassador of the Netherlands, he joined Obama's administration and helped to develop a similar proactive approach that was inspiration for the program as we do it now. And the ambition is, because the program now in Asia is now for a year, so we aim to scale up this approach to the rest of Asia and hopefully also to the rest of the world. What we focus on is, if you take a look at the traditional project cycle, you have it usually starts at the feasibility phase. So people, parties, organizations go to a bank or an international development aid or international development bank, and they put down the proposal and they say, would you like to invest or to finance this or not? And what we do now in this program is, and what is new is that we invest in the process on the pre-project preparation phase, so the phase before the feasibility phase. And what we do is that we ask teams to develop proposals that are integrated, inclusive, and innovative, to be able to develop different kinds of project proposals, of course with an infrastructure focus to tackle the problems in cities. So the cities, these are the type of problems, but you probably know better than I, so I'll skip this. So two years ago, we did the research to be able to select which cities we were going to start on or start with. So we selected Khulna in Bangladesh, Semarang in Indonesia, and Chennai in India. Part of the reason was because we would like to also to connect the long-term planning to short-term projects as we're developing. So for instance, in Bangladesh, you have the Delta Plan 2100 that is being is developed already, but is going to be implemented. And the interventions or the projects that are being developed now in Kuma, they will have to fit into this long-term planning. Okay. So what is this inclusiveness I'm telling you about? The idea is that we started last summer by selecting with a call for action, as we call it, in which we ask teams to come up with their bids to tell us, okay, this is the team we would like to develop our proposal with, and this is how we are going to do it. The teams are a combination of local experts from the city itself and international experts, but also NGOs, not governments, NGOs, urban planners, water engineers, and academia, to be sure that they look at the challenges in the city at a multidisciplinary way. What we want with this inclusiveness is that the teams in the cities develop their proposals together with the people from the city, with the government, with the NGOs that are already there, and build a coalition. And to build a coalition means that the coalition will start from now, but will last until the implementation of the project. And potential future funders are part of it as well. So this is, I took the Samoan case because Wetlands International is very active in this.
Thank you.
So this is our water ambassador. I don't know if you know him. His name is Hank Oping. And this is the way we do the design workshops in the different cities. So to ask people to reflect on the ideas that are on the table, made by the teams, to sharpen and clarify, but also to make sure that that you build this coalition, as I told you. Some more impressions. These are the people in Samara which we're working with. Also the local government, of course, involving the national government now as well, because you need them all. These are the partners who are working together. I saw you now talked many times in your slides as well, but they are part of this as well. And of course the three cities we're working in.
They're all under the same city.
They're except for Kuma, they're also Chennai and Semarang are both part of the under the same city network that is part of the Rockefeller Foundation. It's just Panama.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's no need to explain that. This is the timeline just to show you that that basically the pre-project preparation phase is quite short. So we started April last year, but from June, July on, the team started to work, and they ended already their first research phase last year in December. I will show you one of the conceptual designs on my next slide. And from now until the end of April, the teams are working on the project proposals itself, and they have to be ready by the end of April. And then we go to what we call the transition phase for the taking on to the feasibility phase that is next after this program. So this is the second phase. And what's the integrated way about, the integrated is of course the blue-green infrastructure. It's also, what we call it the multi-functionality. So the recreation alongside or combined with the river urban planning, so that you look at it not only from your own angle, but just that you combine different angles and find solutions there. So this is one of the conceptual designs. This is the team Wetlands International is in. It's the team lead is One Architecture, based. The office is based in the US, and they also participated in the Rebuild by Design competition in the US. Yeah, I can tell a lot about this, but this is one of the conceptual designs that is on the table now, and they're actually transforming it now into more concrete project proposals. And they're using the different projects or the sites within the city to be able to do this. This is the other team working at Samara. This is their conceptual design, also led by a Dutch urban planning organization. But they have a slight different angle because Samara is going from uphill downhill. So the other team focuses a little bit more on the downhill or the city area, and this team is focusing a little bit more on the uphill area, and somewhere in the middle they connect. Yeah, the partners again. Yeah, and I wanted to come back on the innovative, the last I in the program. So the idea is that what we would like, or what we are trying to do with this program, is to create system change, or to try to get a system change. That is what we call transformative capacity. So, and that can be on different levels, but one of the levels is that you look at the interventions that are in the project proposals, and that the way that you look at the way that the interventions itself should not solve just one small problem, but it should more or less be a leverage to have an effect on the rest of the city. So that is one of the ideas that we have for this innovative nature, and also to get the system change. So this is how you can contact us. Please feel free to ask more questions. This is the youth people that we actually were doing it for
their future.
Yeah, the future and women.
Then we go back from the specific projects, and we go back to the EU level. We have Stefan Leiner. He graduated in Forest Sciences of the University of München in Germany. So we have a nice variety of nationalities here. That's very good to see. He joined the European Commission in 1989. That's quite some experience you have now. He has been the head of nature unit in charge of the EU birds and habitat directives, and Natura 2000. For Europeans, these are very strong guidelines, and we hope that they will keep as strong as they are. We will give them the floor right now.
I think
I need to give you the presentation, of course.
Well, thanks a lot, and good afternoon. Just to add a few more, I mean, I'm heading the biodiversity unit in the Director General of Environment of the European Commission. So I'm not in charge of development cooperation or research or regional cooperation, but environment. And actually, I was asked to give you some description of a guidance that we are currently developing on EU level green infrastructure, but I think I will adapt a little bit to the audience and use that presentation also to talk a little bit more and put this into the context of our EU and international biodiversity policy, if I may. Now, in fact, the EU, together with all its member states, is a party to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and I'm also the focal point of the EU to that convention. And in that, we are, as any party, we are supposed to develop a national biodiversity strategy and action plan. We have, therefore, our own EU biodiversity strategy, which runs until 2020. It has the overall objective to stop the loss of biodiversity in the EU and restore ecosystems and their services. And within that, we have several objectives or sub-targets, one of them being to fully implement our EU nature legislation, which is the Birds and Habitats Directive that led to the development of the world's largest network of protected areas, which is the Natura 2000 network, covering now 18% of the land and 10% of the marine area. So we have achieved the Aichi targets in the EU on that. But also has a target that is specifically aimed at measuring, restoring ecosystems and their services through the deployment of green infrastructure, it says there. And then it has some other objectives more related to our global activities, to invasive alien species, to the integration of biodiversity into agriculture, marine, forest policies, etc. But I will mainly focus on that green infrastructure component. In fact, the nature legislation, the EU made an evaluation, the so-called fitness check, and it realized that it was very much fit for purpose, but it needed much more implementation, and therefore a new action plan for nature, people, and the economy was adopted. And within that, it was announced that we would also, in order to enhance the connectivity between the Natura 2000 sites, but also to integrate nature more in the planning and other processes, to develop specific reports and guidance documents, which I will come up to in a second. Very important also, we are now in the context of that our funding instruments, they run normally until, or the current multi-annual financial frameworks run until 2020. The Commission made already proposals for those funding instruments, who are very important in implementing, supporting both EU and third countries in implementing CBD provisions. For example, our research project, Horizon 2020, from Sophie will tell you a little bit more about, but also our regional policy for the EU, where green infrastructure in urban areas has been mentioned as a specific funding priority. So we hope that all of that will be maintained, as currently those proposals are being discussed with the European Parliament and the Council. We have also a small but beautiful environment program called LIFE, which has also supported a lot of specific activities related also to urban green infrastructure proposals. And we also have, obviously, our development cooperation. We also have the Rural Development Fund, which helps a lot farmers and rural areas to develop such kind of progress. And last but not least, there is the Convention on Biological Diversity that I already mentioned. I will come to it at the end of my presentation. So I mentioned this Nature Action Plan, and that actually has said that we will develop a package, and this is currently being finalized. The idea is to adopt it in April or May. We have to see when we will be ready. There will be a communication on the green infrastructure strategy, because as part of that biodiversity strategy, we adopted a more specific strategy on green infrastructure. We made a report on what has happened, what is still to be done. Then we will develop a guidance document on supporting the deployment of EU-level green infrastructure. I will explain that a little bit more. And also a guidance document, which is not so much the topic of my presentation today, on supporting the integration of ecosystems and their services into decision-making, be it from a private sector or from a local authority or from a national government. And there we will summarize all the different tools. There's really a lot around, and try to structure that and give a more comprehensive guidance on that, which we are also currently developing. Now, I think we all know that. Why is this important? Well, because nature and green infrastructure not all needs to be conserved and restored for its intrinsic value, but also because it really delivers all of these ecosystem services, flood prevention, clean air, clean water, well-being, prosperity, and it's really our life support system. I think when you look, I really like the approach that has developed by the Stockholm Resilience Institute of how you can actually demonstrate the Sustainable Development Goals in the wedding cake approach, meaning that all the biosphere-related SDGs are really the foundation for the ones that are more economic related, and these are the foundations that are more socially related. And I think that's really the kind of pyramid. Biodiversity, healthy ecosystem are really the basis for all well-being and life on Earth, and that's why we need to invest in their preservation and restoration. Now, you have already mentioned the definition of green infrastructure, and I can tell you that actually in our new guidance document, we will speak already of not only about green, but green and blue infrastructure. Although the definition always included blue infrastructure, wetlands, and they were included in the definition, but we make it more clear now that we really mean green and blue infrastructure. And there are important words here. First of all, it has to be strategically planned. And that is very important, that you have a plan where you really have valued, you have taken this into account also in your land use planning. And what is also important is designed and managed. So that means that you also have measures in place to implement that and to make sure that this is actually happening in your designation. And as I said, it was always meant to also have aquatic and coastal and marine ecosystems in that definition, but we make that clearer. Also very important that it really tries to enhance the connectivity, not only at the spatial dimension, but also as a functional dimension. Realizing that, for example, a flood prevention measure outside the city can be essential within the city, and I think we need to more connect cities with their surrounding environments in order to have much better interaction there on all kinds of ecosystem services. So that guidance document is really about that scaling up, stimulating more strategic and integrated approach, contributing to really develop and outlining and deployment this green infrastructure and green and blue infrastructure concept in the EU. I will not go into that, what will be in it, but just to say that one of the key topics is to actually explain what are the kind of criteria that we would want to see for a project to be labeled a new level green infrastructure project or a new green and blue infrastructure project. And this is meeting the definition I mentioned. And that means that it really has to demonstrate that it contributes not only to the restoration of some species or habitat types that are of European importance, meaning that are covered by our nature legislation, but also to demonstrate that it contributes to enhancing ecosystems and ecosystem services in particular. So that means that people should not only think, and really that helps to bring various people together, that demonstrate that yes, by restoring that area, we do something good for nature, but we also do something good for all kinds of other ecosystem services. And I think in the third criteria is that it has to have a European dimension, for example, by protecting being on a flyway or by integrating a local activity as part of a broader, I would say, national or even regional plan, or by linking up several projects together. I think these are the kind of elements that we want to highlight in there. The guidance document will also explain a little bit more on how the various instruments that are there that we have already in the funding instruments, the current funding instruments, I mentioned them already, and a lot of what's happening also in Europe is co-funded by various EU funding instruments. And then we also have a lot of activities that bring experts together in order to develop methodologies for MAS, stands for Mapping and Assessing Ecosystems in Their Services, where we work with the European Environment Agency, our research colleagues, and the Joint Research Center in order to really develop a European methodology and criteria on how to do that. KIM-INCA stands for a Knowledge Innovation Partnership, again with those actors, where we develop tools to integrate natural capital accounting into, for example, a national accounting framework, so to add this to your GDP and other measures, but also we work with business partners to develop methodologies for businesses to be able to integrate both the knowledge and the measuring of their impact on ecosystems and the services, but also integrate that from their dependency so that they can actually reduce their impact. And there are more and more businesses that have committed to do that, and that is very important. So we also have, for example, a lot of projects supported by our by various instruments. As I said, one being Horizon 2020, which really has had a focus in the past years on promoting nature-based solutions in urban areas. But we also had related projects, for example, that are supported by the European Investment Bank. There is a natural capital financing facility, and there is a project now in the pipeline in Luxembourg that is really about wetlands, river restoration in the city. There have been other examples. One is a very huge project in North Rhine-Westphalia, a region in Germany. They have restored a very dirty, degraded river, the Emscher, which was just really full of residues and was a dead, basically, river, into now around that river in restoring the whole natural water framework. It was a huge project, and you had a lot of side benefits from that, where the whole area has become worth living, has become cleaner. There's much more parks around it, and that's really a major project I invite to look into. We also have a project that was actually supported by funding from the European Parliament called En Route, where several cities, European cities together, worked in order to exchange best practices on integrating ecosystem in decision-making. And there are some very nice projects, Manchester, for example, but there are many others, Antwerp as well, who really took that seriously and have started to map the ecosystems and the services they have in their city and really try to integrate that into their municipal land use planning and decision-making processes, which meant that when they decided to build some new houses, they took that they are now taking this into account, and that is very important, I think, because often they realize that this leads to a better, cheaper solution than the traditional grey infrastructure that they have developed. On the international scene, I want to say that, for example, at the last conference of the parties to the CBE, specific guidance document was adopted. I have to take my book to name it. It's voluntary guidelines for the design and effective implementation of ecosystem-based approaches to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And I think that's very much an interesting guidance document, which I invite you to look for, because I think it gives an answer to many of the questions that you have raised. And the CBD is also an important partner in that international discussion, supporting the cooperation with climate change, disaster risk reduction, and ecosystem-based approaches that also aim at conserving, restoring ecosystems and their habitats. Another objective is, well, at the CBD, at the last COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, there was also a dedicated meeting. That was the Global Biodiversity Summit for local and subnational governments. And here they adopted I think it was a declaration or resolution, which again includes a lot of good commitments and important statements. And I invite you again to look into it. So, as said, in May, we want to adopt at the latest this guidance document. We also are now starting to prepare the final evaluation of our current new biodiversity strategy and prepare for the strategy post-2020. And here we obviously hope that all that work we have done on mapping and assessing ecosystem and natural capital accounting will go into some more ambitious, I would say, next steps to really make sure that this is now becoming, I would say, part of the DNA of European policy and not a bit of a side activity. And we still have more work to be done, because when people talk about climate change, there is still a lot to talk about, I would say, renewable energy, technological solution, but the role of ecosystems play, and I've seen some reports that demonstrate that a third of the CO2 of the climate change solutions can be done just by conserving and restoring healthy ecosystems, peatlands, wetlands, etc. So we should invest a third of our climate change money into these sort of solutions rather than only focusing on the other things. But that still it's not really mainstream, I would say, in the climate change world. That's just an example that we need to do more to integrate that in our agricultural policy, etc. There's also still more to be done there. We will have a conference on the 23rd and 24th of May, where we want to take stock about what has happened and start the public debates on the future of the EU biodiversity policies. I already mentioned the very importance to follow what is happening in the Council and the Parliament in discussing the next multi-annual financial frameworks, so as to make sure that after 2020, from the research, from the regional policy, from the Environment Fund, and from the Agricultural Fund, we are able to continue, and even it will become even more easy to support these kind of projects in cities that aim to make them more resilient, greener, and healthier, also with more well-being for the people. And also internationally, the global biodiversity framework, the Aichi targets, they have 2020 as an endpoint. So we are now starting quite a comprehensive process in the international level that should end in 2020 in Beijing. That's where the next COP will be. And there's now talk about adopting a new global deal for nature and people that will also hopefully enhance the awareness among all of the governments of this world that we need more investments in healthy ecosystems. I think that's from my side. So as said, I took the opportunity to also present to you a few more others. Policy from the EU perspective, I could only touch very briefly on them. There are websites. You can also ask me questions if you want to have more information on them. Thank you very much.
We have two more presenters, but I propose that we have a little toilet break. And let's see if we can get a glass of water in between while we wait for the other drinks. Is that okay?
Yeah. There's coffee.
Yes?
The
At 4.
after.
Okay.
4:30. But I can ask if they can bring it before.
Okay. But let's have a toilet break, 5-10 minutes, and then we'll continue with 2 last minutes.
No, I cannot stop now.
No, it's a balcon. Let's see how.
¿Cómo también una vez está consolidada la riqueza humana para que no lo invadan?
We have a bit of water, if everybody wants some water here.
Some more water?
Also here, some more. Perhaps the idea wasn't to start at the same time, we're going to the next week, so we'll see for these participants will be the same partner. But the pros, you got the so we have two more presentations.
There's question and answers. I think people can now
or there, or with your hand, more than like, you know. Yes. Yeah, thank you, welcome. The next presentation is Sophie van der Woestijnen, project advisor. Tell me all these abbreviations.
Yeah, I will.
Executive Agency for Small and Medium Enterprises, European Commission. She will take further talking all about H2020 as the group on nation-based solutions.
So, hello everyone, thank you for inviting me, giving some room for presenting the research aspect that's been mentioned from the European Commission. So just because EASME is often we don't know what it's exactly, it's an executive agency of the European Commission that actually manages different EU programs, and Stefan managed and highlighted very much the wonderful nature program LIFE, which is also managed in the same agency as parts of Horizon 2020, which is the research and innovation program, including Societal Challenge 5 on environment and resources, and that's where I currently work. Previously, I worked in Grant DG Research and Innovation, leading the expert group on nature-based solutions. So with nature-based solutions, we're very much taking this innovation approach, looking at cost-effective solutions. That really, one of the most important things is that it simultaneously provides environmental, social, and economic benefits and helps build resilience. It's really part of the definition. So it brings more nature and natural features and natural processes into cities, landscapes, and seascapes. Very locally adapted, resource efficient, and we have this very systemic approach, these systemic interventions, which have already been mentioned previously also several times. So it's very much also an ecosystem-based initiative, like linked to the eco-disaster risk resilience initiatives, the ecosystem-based adaptation, climate adaptation initiatives, the natural water retention measures, and also the green infrastructure with the nature-based solutions, taking very much this research and innovation approach. This is in a very wide policy context, as was also mentioned a little bit previously. At a global level, we have the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, the Urban Agenda, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Resilience. At EU level, we have a whole series of other policies often linked to the ones that also at global level. And what's interesting is that we have several instruments to implement nature-based solutions, and one of the most, and the other policies, and one of the most important ones for us for nature-based solutions is the Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Framework Program. But we also collaborate and try to create synergies with other programs like the LIFE program, like the Cohesion Funds, to leverage the knowledge coming out of the research and innovation projects and have them implemented more on the ground. Because there was the overarching theme also of the partnerships, I would like to mention also the urban agenda for the EU, one of the policies we're working on, where there are 12 priority themes, and 2 of these themes are climate adaptation, and one that's of particular interest to the projects we're managing at the agency is the sustainable use of land and nature-based solutions. So here there's really partnerships that are nature-based solutions and land use plans with different actions to improve regulations on nature-based solutions. These are partnerships between commission services and cities. There's another one on mainstreaming nature-based solution financing, and one on setting standards for nature-based solutions. We've heard very often the need for standards and also the problems of financing. So these are, I think, quite important partnerships to help things move forward. I won't talk about the Sendai framework program that was mentioned very much by previous. And then there's also the EU climate adaptation strategy, which is also very relevant to the topics that were discussed here. So on the research and innovation roadmap we created, we really have several objectives. One is to enhance the framework conditions for nature-based solutions at EU and international policy level, the ones I mentioned previously. It's really also to develop a community of innovators through awareness and engagement, because that's really an issue that's, like we were discussing, making people more aware and engaging them. And that's, amongst others, by providing a strong evidence and knowledge base, by advancing the development, uptake, and upscaling of innovative nature-based solutions. And we're very much in this co-design, co-development, and co-implementation process that was also mentioned. Very important also to have a multi-stakeholder approach involving all the relevant actors in the process and right from the beginning. And then doing this by funding large demo projects, which I will mention just afterwards. And then also mainstreaming nature-based solutions within the international research and innovation agenda. For some of the awareness issues, one of Stefan's slides also mentioned Opera, where we have a whole series of nature-based solution case studies, so cities where you can click and you can look more closely at the actions they've implemented, and which highlights best practices. And this is an open website, so anyone can go and add their city to this database. Under Horizon 2020, we started very much in 2016, focusing on investing in research and innovation projects on nature-based solutions, although previously we had done a lot of work on ecosystem service projects. So it was a bit of a follow-up, a logical consequence of moving to this more solution-based or oriented approach. And in 2016, we funded several projects for water and climate resilience in urban areas. And so I've actually put all the links up here so that you can easily go and check out the projects themselves with the different case studies they have. And in 2017, there are 4 projects were funded under the nature-based solutions to enhance health, well-being, and social cohesion through inclusive urban regeneration. Very urban-oriented projects where you have all of the cities that are mapped here on all the cities that are involved are mapped here. You can see them on the map, and where there's very much not just this focus on technical innovation, but also very much social and governance innovation, regulatory innovation, looking at land management and planning, and business and finance, which is also complemented by some other research projects. Here, the links to 2 projects, Nature for Cities and Naturevation, on business, finance, and governance models. Other interesting projects include NIAD, which is on operationalizing the insurance value of ecosystem service. So it's quite a new concept, looking at the insurance value of ecosystems, and its project is coming a bit to its end. So there's some very nice results coming out there. We have a platform, and then we have 3 large-scale demonstrators on nature-based solutions for hydrometeorological risk reduction, which have just started last year. And so these are also really promising projects that will contribute to this space and to this community building. We have the 2018 calls for proposals have closed, but where there was also very much one on sustainable and restoration of ecosystems in cities through sustainable urbanization, with a focus on international cooperation with China, and its sister call is actually still open until middle of February, international cooperation with the CELAC countries. So in total, there's been quite a lot of investment since 2016 in these nature-based solutions projects. And just maybe, I forgot to mention one thing that was also the approach we take with these nature-based solutions demonstrated projects is the twinning approach. So we ask to have sort of leading or cities that are quite already engaged into the process and cities who want to become more engaged, so that there's really this knowledge exchange. So it was quite interesting also to hear about the project that was doing this exchange between different cities. And finally, to build the evidence base on the effectiveness of nature-based solutions, we asked one of our other projects, to develop an impact evaluation framework, really looking at the very many different benefits that can be provided by nature-based solutions. So they created sort of a version 1 of a series of indicators on the effectiveness. And we're asking our projects, we're now working together to create a second kind of version 2, if you like, of a impact evaluation framework. So we don't want all the different projects to just create their own indicators, etc. We want people to work together, and that we can then have much more solid kind of database. So it may be interesting also for some of the others who are having projects to have a look or get back to us. So thank you for your attention, and this is an invitation to work further with you and with nature. Thanks.
Then we go to our final presentation, after which we can have a dialogue, ask questions. I mean, we have a lot of expertise and knowledge here in the room. Maybe different people attending have different questions and different challenges we can help them get the right answers to. But before that, the last presentation, Mr. Frans van der Ven, expert advisor, urban and land and water management of Deltares. He is Associate Professor of Urban Water Management at the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Geosciences of Delft University in the Netherlands. Has a PhD in hydrology and leading research worldwide on creating sustainable cities, making them climate resilience, flood and drought proof, and subsidence free.
Thank you, Sander. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. I'm speaking on behalf of the platform called WSSTP, which stands for Water Supply and Sanitation Technology Platform. It's a European platform combining the efforts of over 200 parties, both private parties and public parties in the water sector, well, to see developments in knowledge development and in what will be going on. I'm personally within that organization. I'm leading a cluster called Hybrid Green and Grey Infrastructure, and no wonder that my title is planning hybrid green infrastructure. Okay, some of the words were already used in this today in the presentation. No need anymore to tell you about nature-based solutions or /grey-green interventions. Whichever word is used, we think about the same type of. Now, my presentation is not going the way it should. Okay, there we go. Well, first of all, I think it's good to take a step back and look at the current way we see the implementation of nature-based solutions in practice. And if I take that step back, I would say it's quite defensive. We are defending ourselves against climate change, flooding, drought, pollution. We are defending the loss of biodiversity. It's way less opportunistic. What could nature-based solutions bring to our society, to our world? And in that defensive approach, my presentation is built along these lines. So first, I want to walk along this defensive approach, which is the way we do it now. It's quite easy. We have plenty of solutions, blue-green solutions we can choose from. Now, our problem is not that we have no solutions. Our problem is that we have to select from all these solutions that we can choose from. It's a selection and planning process that is needed. And of course, we have developed tools to support that planning process. One of which is the adaptation support tool, because in an urban area, in an existing urban area, if you want to implement something, you have to see where you can do something, and what you can do, where, and how effective that is. That is the first foremost challenge we are facing. So we started developing, for example, that adaptation support tool, which was developed under Climate Kick, by the way. It's also a European program. And this is a planning support system that helps people to sit together and to develop a plan how an area could be made much more climate resilient in a way, to see which interventions can be taken where in the area and how effective that is. And then we started quantifying resilience metrics such as detention capacity to avoid flooding or peak flow reduction or cooling effects, and of course the costs of implementation and maintenance of these solutions. And all that is given by this tool, so that in a way you can have, while using this tool with all the stakeholders and experts around the table, you have a discussion what could be done where. This is during the conceptual phase of design that you have a discussion, okay, this could be done there, this could be done there. And this is, by the way, a movie taken in an application in the city of New Orleans, where they are using the tool, currently using the tool in real planning workshops. But, well, let's take a step back again and look at the signals. Say, well, we're talking about Europe's identity, for example, in some situations. Europe's identity is sustainable, inclusive, competitive. And another very important statement in that meeting was happiness is the identity of Europe. Europe is a happy continent. all the countries of the Europe are scoring quite high on happiness indices around the world. So we go for happiness as a general field.
What about Brexit?
They don't want to be happy.
They don't want to be good. That's the only problem. That is. So and another signal was well, it's no longer sufficient to adapt to control the effects of climate change, etc. No, we need net positive impacts on our environment of what we do. And we need to have a positive impact rather than compensating effects for compensation of the negative effects. And eco-efficiency is no longer the appropriate response, was one of these statements there. Social mobilization is needed. We need to involve the population there. So, okay, signals. Just see what we can do that. But how does that relate to our thinking about nature-based solutions? That is what, and is that nature-based solutions approach we have now sufficient to answer all these questions? That is my key question. The way we look at nature-based solutions in that traditional perspective, you could say, well, we have that mechanical, technological, concrete solutions of wastewater treatment plants, sewer systems, the drainage systems, etc. And then we have nature-based solutions in addition to that. We could add an urban wetland, we could add a bioswale, or we could add, so it's adding, but it's still separated. And the question is whether that separation is the true meaning of hybridity. Because I think hybridity means that these two systems start cooperating. And they are a coherent system, and that is something, talking about these hybrid systems, that we should try to start developing. We have to make one step ahead in this procedure. But the question is how to do that, of course. Is that traditional way we look at greening our cities, is that sufficient? Or should we seek integration of say, in a more opportunistic approach? Where are the opportunities to find this information? What are the opportunities? And I'm using other slides from another source, but it was for my convenience, but the story is the same. For example, water is a local resource. Water harvesting in an urban environment is part of that sustainable solution. It's closing cycles, it's circular economy, it's circular solutions that we are striving for. But how are we going to do that in a sustainable way? And this is a picture that nicely illustrates the hybrid nature of what I'm talking about. It's both technology and it is natural drainage systems in an integrated way. Can be done, but it's hardly ever done. Another example is for example, water surfaces. Well, we can use these water surfaces to live on, to live above, to live with. It is not necessarily an empty space, it's a space we can develop, but in a sustainable way. But what is a sustainable way is the next step, of course, and how to develop that in a sustainable way. But that we can use these spaces also for urban purposes in a more integrated way. Recreation is important for all the people, so water for recreation and green is very, very important link I think we are able to develop. And of course, we have that water for biodiversity component in our urban environment. Of course, we have to strengthen the biodiversity of our urban environments, and no question about it. But biodiversity also means that we have to maybe introduce food production back into our urban environments. The upcoming of urban agriculture, well, it moves from hobby farming now to more professional farming, but how to integrate that into that urban context? That is the big question if it comes to urban resilience. How to do that? And then the link between water, green, and energy. And I start with cooling. Urban heat islands are just the effect of the fact that cities are unable to sweat. There's no evaporation in an urban area, and as a result, cities run hot. Definitely. That is so the trick is bring back water in our urban environments, take care that it evaporates, and the urban heat island will be reduced there. But on the other hand, the flip side of this story, if we have urban surface water in our environment, we could use that as a solar collector to harvest heat. This type of surface waters, like this urban pond in the Netherlands, is a perfect solar heat collector. It's a matter of harvesting it. It's a matter of storing this heat in the aquifer underneath, and over winter you can use that energy. So that is opportunities you can think of, and opportunities that could integrate nature-based solutions with the traditional green solutions with the mechanical solutions. And that's where we started thinking of my final component, hybridity. It's not a matter of engineering only. It's not a matter of environmental hybridity only. It's also spatial hybridity. It's also governmental hybridity that we should think of. How to bring these worlds together and how to integrate these worlds. And if you're talking about spatial hybridity, I think I have a nice example from some work that is done at the Faculty of Architecture at the moment at TU Delft. They started thinking about spatial hybridity, and they came up with 3 keywords: connectivity, visibility, and legibility of the landscape. As an architect, you feel familiar with the terminology, I think, but for some engineers it's quite new to think about legibility of a landscape. But to give an example, well, everyone, I was there with my students last summer, everyone felt comfortable with this space. It's in The Hague somewhere, but it was felt as a high level of spatial hybridity. It integrates blue, green, but also all the urban functions. This is a huge parking garage at the back. But okay, look at the quality of the space. Everybody feels comfortable and relaxed. And that's the moment that we start thinking of, well, what is the thing we should be looking for? What was that happiness, net positive, inclusive? What is that? And all of a sudden someone said we should create man-made natural systems that people can feel part of. People can feel part of. Hey, that's interesting. Because it's about feeling, it's about sentiment, it's about emotion that we are working with in our urban environment as in the creative component. And that makes that, well, so we have to work with these feelings to create these hybrid nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. Feelings, positive feelings of safety, happiness, health. That's what we want to achieve with it, or reduce the negative feelings. So that's the sort of work that we should be working on in the near future. And in conclusion, I could say, well, nature-based solutions are there to make that happy urban environment, that healthy urban environment, that well-tempered city. It is there to feed the positive sentiments to the people by creating biodiversity, etc. It could be used in an opportunistic instead of a defensive way, all to stimulate urban resilience. And in that sentence, in the brackets, nature-based solutions is not only about nature, it's about people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was our last presenter. But still energized. I would like to ask the people that are not speakers to come up with the first questions. And then all the different presenters can come up with a nice coherent answer. Start with this. Do you have any questions on what you've been presented so far?
The concept of resilience bothers me a little bit, because resilience in the context of ecosystems is a very complex thing. But the way it's used here in resilience of cities, it seems to be much simpler. Should we not try to harmonize the definitions of what resilience is?
So, who would be the speaker here who has the best answer to this? I mean, ecosystem resilience is about adapting and creating
tipping points and all that.
Yeah,
it's very complicated.
Receiving stress and
it's a thermodynamic concept.
Yeah, and it has been adopted into social science from that, of course. Now, for example, if the 100 the Same Cities initiative have developed this whole circular analytic model to measure resilience on the city scale, and based on that model, the cities develop their own resilience strategy. Maybe you can want to say something about this. How does it has helped you thinking in resilience?
Yeah, it's because yesterday we talked about it because with Mexico and Spain, every city understood the first step of resilience from the experience to generate that research about resilience. For example, in Mexico, the earthquakes. In Barcelona, the cutoff of the light. In Panama, the floods. But resilience is more than mitigate floods or earthquakes or electrical fluid. So resilience is the way of the social cohesion to coexist with the problem in the city, natural or non-natural, and during continue living the city as after the problem or during the problem. No? So we have to be no formula is only one for the or here for our country or yours, but the process to design, to understand people and problems and potentially is the way to understand the way to be resilient in front of all the challenges.
Can you call it robustness? That of resilience. Robustness? Is that...
No, it's like a.
Es como el elástico. ¿Cómo es el elástico?
Like elasticity.
No, pero la bandita elástica. It's like the band. You pull out, and after that, the band continues functioning. No? It's more than elastic.
Mexico? Is there a question from Mexico? One of our slides.
Well, yes. One question we want to talk about our experience with blue and green infrastructure. I come from Hermosillo. It's a city in the desert and north of Mexico, with a summer of 48 to 52 degrees, with no rain along all the years, but with hurricanes and tropical storms. And so we received in one day all the storm water. So it's a big challenge to manage the water, because we have lack of water. Indeed, the heat island effect is a big problem. So we decided 5 years ago to start to work with the local climate change agenda. So there are diverse lines of action, but let me talk about two specific. One of them, we introduced green infrastructure in our streets for green and trees and stormwater channel. So was the free experience in Mexico in this area. So we received support for the BID, the American Bank of Development, and the North America Development Bank, for publish the first manual of green infrastructure for these Mexican cities. So we work in that. And the second project that I want to expose you is we call the Metropolitan Park. It's a 50 hectares central area that we received from the federal government. It's a site impacted for many years of extraction of gravel, sand, and precious material. So we decided to restore it. We built in this area artificial wetland. We call it in Spanish humedal. Or humedal is a lagoon system. The first step was with a public-private association to build a plant of treatment water, residual water. So we can now give the treatment of the 100% of the residual water, and 20% of this water is dedicated to the wetland. So with this, we are preventing the floods. We have stormwater control. We have infiltration of the water to the soil, and very special effect. We receive now the birds that migrate from the north, from Canada, for the winter. All these two species that we are receiving, and they are nesting in this area. Actually, we are converting with the first phases of the project with transforming the space for sport and recreation area. So we have an important inversion in this project, but now we are looking for more support for the project.
Okay, great. Sounds like you're covering many of the co-benefits.
I don't have a PowerPoint, but just
we have another
some pictures.
Yeah, we can share that picture. We'll share all the presentations with the permission, of course, of the presenter by email. If you leave your email back. Do you have a question from the back? Oh, lady there. Anything interesting to mention? From the back over there. You, sir. Do you have a question for our specialists? Very interesting, I think. Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, fine. We're all fine. We're all ready to get a well-deserved drink and snack here next door. This is all ready. I want to thank you all for your time, and I certainly learned a lot. I hope you did too. So let's keep working together in partnership to build this blue and green infrastructure. Thank you.